What have you learned?
Um, One thing that's been more clear um, is how I'm trying to, get I'm trying to attain a stage rather than a state. And
Good. So a developmental stage is different than a mystical state. Mystical states, as wonderful as they may be, come and go. I'm speaking to the audience now. Come and go, but these each of them represent a stage of development potentially. And this is where the other half of growing up and waking up are both are vitally important. The waking up can occur at any point, but you still have to grow up. All right, go ahead. Good. I'm glad you make the distinction.
and I mean, we've talked about it before, and I've heard you talk about it in recent videos. Um, but then, like, just the past day, in my experience, yesterday evening, I was sitting and I um, started doing like the turning the light around, and I was making like good progress on it, and it felt really good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and then this morning I wake up and I had a headache and I felt really bad, and my thoughts were all over the place, and um, so that was like, well, it's clear, like, you can sit and
Okay. What one of the most
what does it mean if it's just temporary?
one of the most common observations in meditation is that all kinds of it's like washing the laundry. All kinds of the dirty laundry starts. I'm not saying whatever you dreamt or anything is dirty laundry, but it's the metaphor that as you start to settle your mind down, not only does it become more clear, but all the dirty clothes from the bottom of the hamper start to rise, and that's just part of the process. And so, oftentimes in early stages of meditation, people will report intensification of negative thoughts or feelings or things like that, and that's just to be expected because you're cleaning house basically, and that goes on for a while. Nothing to be concerned about. As a matter of fact, it's probably good.
Okay.
Since we were mentioning states and stages, let me introduce people to this book. This book, Knowing How to Know, written by Idris Shah, probably the teacher of the age for the 20th century, a real Sufi of the Muslim persuasion. And in this book, which is a part of a series of books, he talks a lot about the same things that we cover here: higher nutrition, single-mindedness, and he's a very, very good writer. Even Doris Lessing remarked at how good a writer he was. He was also the teacher of Doris Lessing, for those that are turned on by that. Now, I'm showing you this book, Knowing How to Know, but this is probably about 16th or 17th in a series of 20. And it's really recommended that you start with the first, if this is for serious students. And also he wrote two books, or he wrote two Dharma books for the general public. One of them was Tales of the Dervishes, highly, highly, highly recommended. And the other one was The Sufis, which I don't have right here at the moment. But depending on how serious the student is, you could just read the public books, or you could read the actual teaching books for Idris Shah. Can't recommend it highly enough. It may be easier for older folks because they still read. I've noticed over the years, but it's recommended for everybody. Thank you for letting me put that book ad in.
Yeah. Should I pick that one up again?
I'm sorry?
Should I pick that one up as well?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
How many of his books have you read?
collection a few years ago.
Okay, yeah. Well, definitely, this is a later one, so definitely yes. If there's any questions, let me know.
Okay.
Good. I'm glad I brought it up. All right.
It's funny. I was just wondering when you were gonna bring the Sufis up again.
Well, let me say something about that. The Sufi impulse predates Islam and predates Christianity. Sufi is a word that we use in common parlance for the latest iteration, which happens to be Islamic or somewhat Islamic. It actually transcends all of that while still remaining extremely respectful of Islam. And the great benefit of this school is that they have at their fingertips the teachings of people like Ghazali and many other, Rumi, and many other great quote Muslim, quote Sufi masters, right? I should take the quotes off of Muslim. They were definitely Muslim. But Sufi masters like Rumi and Ghazali and the others are I'm blocking on them at the moment. You know, these absolutely incredible writers and teachers. Averroes, Ibn Sina, Avicenna, just a lot. And also they understand the connection between the Sufi impulse and techniques and the Catholic mystics of the same time period.
What do you mean?
They were in Spain for, I don't know, 700, 800 years. And that was one of the great centers of learning and teaching. And there was much crosstalk between Muslims, Christians, Jews. You know, they didn't have the same kind of insanity in the same way that we do now. With regard to looking at only the differences and not the similarities between these Abrahamic traditions, are all Abrahamic traditions. So for those that you aren't aware of that, the Christians, the Muslims, and the Jews are all considered people of the book. And by the book, it refers to something roughly analogous to the Old Testament, something like that. And many of the same prophets, Moses and heroes, David, etc. It's a really wonderful world to explore if you don't know about it, because there's mystics are second to none. Yeah, I probably should talk more about that, shouldn't I? But we'll see what unfolds. Maybe we will cover more of this. If people ask me questions, that would really help, right? So if you have any questions from this, just then it'll naturally come up.
I was going to say the reading the teachings of Zen. I think that book reminds me of the Sufi books.
Yes, well, okay, and this is the other thing that people may not know. As the Sufi impulse precedes Islam and Christianity, etc., it most certainly had a huge impact, a monster impact on Buddhism. But at that point, we call it Buddhism. And so in the cultural sphere, see, because Buddhism is much earlier, this book is written by probably the Sarabon Bees. But all of this stuff gets trashed and lost in history because our political affinities shift. And so we decide, well, if it's Muslim, it's got to be bad, or if it's Buddhist, it's got to be good, or if it's Taoist, it's got to be bad, and Buddhist good, or vice versa. And it just goes on and on and on. But once you're clear and you have an adequate scope, it's transparently clear that it's the same folks, that same perennial impulse of human endeavor that seeks truth and seeks to know God or truth as far as it can be known. So the form that takes depends on the age and the epoch. That's all. And the tragedy, and one of the things the Sufis are very good about, is they understand that people mistake the container for the content. And so they may see this and say, oh, that's written by a Muslim. Oh, I don't want that. Or, oh, that's written by a Buddhist. I don't want that. Or, oh, that's Christian. I don't want that. Not understanding, like, remember the story of the grapes, where they have all the different names for grapes, but they're all talking about the same thing. That's the case here. We really need to resuscitate education in the West. We really do. It'll kill us otherwise, and we're being killed. Okay, sir? I probably will end up saying more about it as we go along, but question?
I was going to say these, it brings to mind that like these small, like the Sufi stories and these Zen sayings and teachings.
Oh yeah, they're very similar techniques.
They feel like.
Go ahead.
They feel like they're little, like, almost like antidotes or like mimetic antiviruses or something, and they just live in the information space and stop
and more. They're designed that way. They're highly sophisticated psychological instruments. So while we're talking about the Sufis, let me bring up this book, which is also by Idris Shah, The Subtleties of the Inimitable Mulla Nasrudin, who sees the world as upside down and backwards. And so it's also called, this is backwards, The Exploits of the Incomparable Mulla Nasrudin, or The Subtlety. So this is 2 books in one. Highly recommended. And here's an example of a teaching story, just a real quick one. I just opened this book up at random just to give you a flavor of what's inside. It's very easy reading. Highly recommended for people of average intelligence and above. But here's one. Names. A certain conqueror said to Nasrudin, and Nasrudin is a teaching figure, and he's called the Mullah, and he's there. This is the most incredible psychology I've encountered in my life, and I've studied psychology all my life, so, for what that's worth. A certain conqueror said to Nasrudin, Mullah, all the great rulers of the past had honorific titles with the name of God in them. There was, for instance, God gifted and God accepted, and so on. How about such a name for me? God forbid, said Nasrudin. So, in joke format, they implant certain ideas or certain pieces of information in your brain, and they stay with you much longer because they're little teaching stories or jokes, or Zen koans, for example, which are horribly misunderstood in the current West. They're thought to be nonsense things but nothing could be further from the truth. The Sufi are much more accessible, and in this case, it's I think they're trying to remind us that you do not associate names with God, right? I mean, God can't be named. And so it's just a series of jokes like that. And again, for anybody who's interested, and they're funny, a lot of them are funny, very funny. Can't recommend this. The whole corpus of Idris Shah cannot be recommended highly enough. Okay. Questions?
Back to that topic of stages. How does one, like, as you know, get to the next stage? Is it just a gradual?
First one makes it to the first stage, the stage of permanent joy. And then you worry about the later stages. The first stage is called joy. It's described in this a book, within this book, called The 10 Stages. And the first stage is that of joy. And they have all the characteristics. If people think they're awakened or enlightened or, spiritual or whatever, this is a good place to check. Because if you meet the criteria for the stage of joy, then you can talk about the next stage. But the first stage, the stage of joy, is quite wonderful. Do you have questions about that in particular, or?
Well, how do you get to the stage of joy?
You read the Avatamsaka. You empty your. You get a handle. Well, let me slow down. Mm-hmm. First, you set your intent. Mm-hmm. Once your intent is set, and you're clear that this is what you want to do with your life, then you start learning how to do it. Now, there's different ways to learn how to do it. I just showed you the Sufi method, which is extremely sophisticated psychology. There's also the Buddhist way, which evolved out of the Taoist, right? And gradually you start to saturate yourself with the kinds of information that you need, and mainly you disabuse yourself of false notions. Remember the story about the teacup? You have to empty your teacup. You get rid of all your crazy preconceptions about what any of this stuff is. Mm-hmm. And then you start to refine your mind. You start to grow up, and you put some reins on your desire and on your envy or any negative emotions you might have. And then you learn to quiet your mind. And then you notice that when your mind is not all agitated, the world starts to look a little different. And then gradually, through a gradual process, you get to the stage of joy. Let me just read something of that stage while we're here. Do you mind?
No.
The 10 Stages is a standalone sutra within the Flower Ornament Sutra. I'm just gonna have to read a little piece of it, but this will give an idea. Now then, in beings who have well-deserved roots of goodness, who have done their tasks well, who have accumulated provisions for the path, who have attended Buddhas in the world, who have consolidated pure practices, who are in the care of spiritual friends, who have thoroughly purified their intentions, who have great determination, who are endowed with supreme zeal, who actualize pity and compassion, the aspiration for enlightenment is aroused, for the quest of enlightened knowledge, for the attainment of the 10 powers, for the attainment of great expertise, for the attainment of enlightened qualities of impartiality, for the salvation of all beings, for the purification of great mercy and compassion, for the attainment of knowledge of all in the 10 directions, for the unobstructed purification of all Buddha lands, for awareness of past, present, and future in a single instant, and for expertise in turning the wheel of the great teaching. This intention of enlightening beings, furthermore, is aroused and guided by great compassion, controlled by wisdom and knowledge, sustained by skill and means, stabilized by will and determination, immeasurable as the power of the Buddhas, clearly distinguishes the power of sentient beings and the power of Buddha, focused on unfragmented knowledge in accord with spontaneous knowledge, completely receptive to the guidance of wisdom and knowledge of all Buddha teachings, as it is as ultimate as the cosmos, as enduring as space, abiding forever. So the first stage, the stage of joy, it's what they just said, right? But there they actually deliver it to you, and in the process of reciting this sutra, these qualities begin to manifest in you, and then one day you wake up and you realize, wait a minute, underneath whatever turmoil there may be in my life, there's a sense of quiet, persistent joy. And that's the first stage. Something like that. Now, obviously, I've abbreviated it horribly, and I haven't done it justice, but that's about as far as I can do for that particular thing in this kind of format. So I recommend the 10 stages and the first stage, joy. And anything you're short on, get more of.
What do you mean by that? Anything?
Well, they just said skill and means, knowledge, compassion, teachers, good friends if you can find them in the Dharma. They just mentioned a bunch of different things.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the process. It's analogous. Let's say the first stage of being a great athlete is to have endurance, running, to have agility with your feet, to have strength in your arms, and to have practice throwing the ball, right? And blocking. And as you gradually accumulate all these things, before you know it, you're an athlete, beginning athlete.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a crude analogy, but that's what I can do right now.
Sure.
But first, you have to set your determination, your will. Okay, sir? The 10 stages is considered a standalone sutra, and I'll just leave it at that. All right?
Okay. So I've been thinking about in the Zen teachings, all these teachings really, they talk about reality being like an illusion and seeing past the illusion.
That's a preliminary teaching, yeah.
And so when I think about it, when I try to see that, I can understand.
Well, that's not just Zen. That's also neurobiology, right? That's just also
Right, that's
common
right.
sense. It's like we understand that the world that we perceive out there does not look like that, but our brain makes it look like that. And it's not even our brain that does it, but just for ease of speaking, that the sensory inputs do not correspond to a reality that looks like that. And we know that if we change just the gain on any of the sensory elements, we'd see a different world. And
Right.
Furthermore, from a physics point of view, we realize that there's no there, that we're looking at the exchange of information at best, right? In a quantum soup or ocean. And so forget the Zen, forget the Buddhism, just the basic science leads you to exactly the same place.
Right. And so the idea is that you see that so that you can detach from it. Right?
In the beginning, it's one detaches oneself from the world so one can work on the mind. But then later, when you realize this is your mind, the whole thing is your mind, then it's different. And so one of the things I was pondering yesterday, what does non-dual even mean? Non-duality? What do people mean by that? But somebody can let me know. But the point is that yes, this is a stage of realization, steps in realization. So at first you must understand emptiness, and that's taken for granted in this. Not taken for granted. They teach it to you in this book, that nothing exists inherently by itself. Everything is put together of other things. Nothing lasts in time, and nothing has an inherent reality. Okay, in that way. Mm-hmm. So then, when you look at it, you see it's empty. But are you calling that the world's empty? Is that the same thing as saying it's an illusion?
I would say so.
Okay,
And well,
fine. Then we're using the same language for now. Keep going.
yeah. So with things like things that I see, I think it's easy for me to be like, this is an illusion. It's just light. It's just, it's a like a projection, and
Good.
so that one, I it's I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's like I feel like I understand it. But then the one where I have trouble with is like this bodily sensation
Okay, well,
where
instead of that, go to smell and sound.
mm,
Okay? And then notice how there's a different consciousness altogether. You can have a world with just sound.
mm-hmm,
That's a different consciousness. And then go to smell. Totally distinct. And this is important because it's easy to gloss over this. I know I did, right? But then later you realize why these ancients distinguish between those consciousnesses, because what you're calling your consciousness is this amalgam of these different things, kind of all reinforcing, or they're all saying, "Yeah, you got it right, buddy. You got it right, buddy." You know, and that needs to be understood sufficiently deeply. Now let's go ahead. What was the? Where were you? What was the bodily sensations?
yeah,
What
that one
body?
feels this body.
See how dense, and wait till when you realize that the brain itself is just an icon on a screen. There is no brain there. There is no body there. It's all a play of I mean, using the VR metaphor, and forgive me,
Mm-hmm.
God, I mean, because this may not be the right, I mean, this could set people back. The VR is a metaphor, but just imagine an ocean of bits of information. But some of them have the characteristic of consciousness. So they're observers. And I recommend Chris Field for the whole issue of observers. So the illusory body is having illusory sensations. What happened? I started to echo for some reason. Okay, here's a meditation I suggest. Let's do it. First, clear all the air out of your lungs, all the stale stuff. Relax your body. Start with your feet and your legs, your trunk, your shoulders. Now relax it some more. And once it's fully relaxed, relax it some more. And this one we'll do with our eyes closed to make it a little bit easier. Let your thoughts slow. Put your attention on your breath. And use your breath to slow your mind. Now we're going to drop a few things. Drop your name. Drop your past. Drop your family. Drop your job. Drop your friends. Drop your location. Drop your future. Drop all thoughts that are related to an individual you. And just be in this silent, peaceful, dark luminosity of infinite spaciousness. Oh my God, I forgot what we're doing here. Dang. Remind me, what are we doing here? Why are we here? Oh, your body sensations. Okay. Now, you may hear a sound in the distance. Just let it be there in that infinite luminous darkness. A thought may peek up its head. Let it come and go. Just place it in this infinite, anonymous, luminous darkness with no past and no future. Now a body sensation may arise in that infinite, vast, luminous darkness. Just let it be there. It'll come and go. If you're lucky, you may feel an itch. Just note it or focus on it. And notice you can put it anywhere you want in this infinite space. And you don't have to have a body for that sensation to exist. And so the body sensation is just like the sound in the distance, or a little thought that arises and fades away. Or a smell that comes and goes. And just hang out in this beautiful spaciousness in which things arise and then they pass away. So a body sensation is just another object in consciousness. Comes and goes. You don't need, the body, even the body. See the bodies. See how your eyes reinforce the idea, and you'll see this, and that's why separating these six consciousnesses makes some sense in the beginning or in the end. So try that and see if that works for you. Okay. It's just another flavor of thought. You could see something, you could smell something, you could hear something, you could feel something. They're just different flavors of thought. You look outside, those are different things. The wind blows through the leaves of an oak tree. That feels somewhat different. Mm-hmm. But that's a sensation too. And once you remove the boundaries around your mind, and you aren't limited to your skull or the room you happen to be in, or even this planet. Although you could just hang out with the landscape as your mind for a while. You can do that. Your consciousness is free. That's the thing people don't get. With a free consciousness, just think what you can do in this ocean of information, or what appears like information. Again, it's a metaphor, an analogy. Okay, sir? Questions? Mm-hmm. Happy to do that kind of meditation, by the way, just anytime, I think. I don't know.
What's that?
Nothing. I was going to say that I'm happy to do meditations like that, but the role of this thing is to get information across, and occasionally, like show you how you can get there. So drop all personal identifiers. I should have said your girlfriend and your gender and your birthday, and just drop all of that stuff and just be consciousness for a while. It's very relaxing. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, questions.
On that one, sometimes when I try to stop the views, stop thinking, stop like these thoughts of why I'm this and that. Sometimes I find myself like I'm almost like stopping myself from breathing as well.
Well, then focus on the breathing. And you can stop your thoughts anytime you want, really, but it takes practice, right? It's like the shot put or something. You got to practice. But and you don't get all agitated about it, because it's just make it worse. But you just generally start to practice, and then the first thing is to think, this can be done. First, you got to believe that it can be done, because if you don't believe it can be done, your mind will be more than happy to make sure it's right. Then just practice patience, effort, the tiniest amount of discipline, and then you don't need the discipline because it just comes naturally. But let me tell you, in this day and age, I can't imagine investing in anything other than your consciousness. I mean, I suppose I can, but I mean, to me, it's just common sense that this would have to come first. Because what are you going to rely on when things hit the fan? And they already have kind of hit the fan. You need peace, safety.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you just get knocked around by the insanity that we call public life now. But it'll be over, too. Okay, question?
Yeah, on that topic, actually, I keep having like I see people, working on side projects and putting out apps and stuff, and that they, there's a lot of opportunities like that, and
yeah, those are fun too. Those are fun too.
And I guess
work should be a hobby, in my opinion. No, I mean, I don't know. See, for someone like you, all right, that is successful and well placed, has a good training for now, you shouldn't work kind of be like a big hobby or something. I don't know. I probably shouldn't say it that way, but the thing is, I can promise you, as an old man, you'll have some nice memories or whatever, but you won't be able to use what you've built as a young man unless it's of a special nature. Okay, you can use knowledge, you can use experience, you can use, capacities when you're older. But you can't use an app that was, really cool and fun, back in the 2020s or whatever. I mean, they're fun. Yeah. Just do something if you want.
Well, I think my problem is there's too many ideas or things I want to do versus the time I have.
Well, ask yourself, will this thing be around in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years?
I mean... Because
you will be.
Yeah, that's a hard question to answer these days.
Very difficult to answer. And I don't mean to be that hard about it. I mean, that's why I say it, it's more like a hobby, right? I mean, I could see somebody. Let's say you were a bicycle mechanic, right? Mm-hmm. And you wanted to build the coolest bicycle you could build, just to have a cool bicycle. That's more like a hobby. If you get paid for it, good.
Okay.
But for yourself, for your own individual self, where your treasure lies, there shall your heart be also. Who said that? Tolstoy? Where your treasure lies, there shall your heart be also. Can you look that up? Tolstoy quoting the Bible? Is that Jesus?
Matthew 6:21.
Okay.
For where your treasure, there is your heart.
Okay, read it slowly
There.
and give the citation.
It's Matthew 6:21. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.
Boom. Is he quoting Jesus? Or is that Matthew?
Let's see.
Sounds like Jesus. Could be Jesus. Jesus is the man. Just go by that guy, what that guy says. The kingdom of God is within you. If ye had but had faith, you could move mountains. It is nearer to you than your jugular vein. We could look it up later.
Well, here's the whole passage that's from. It's
Okay.
treasures in heaven.
Okay, don't let your voice drop and let's hear it.
Yeah. Treasures in heaven. Lay not up for yourselves treasure upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through there and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust does corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.
Boom. Now that's wisdom, right? That's the kind of thing you should have on your wall. And then all the other fun stuff in life, that's like a little hobby, but where your but do not build in something that the moths and the rust and the coding guys and the government and everybody else is just going to like destroy anyway.
Yeah.
Invest in your soul, your heart, that's where the real treasure is. So I think maybe Tolstoy quoted that. Beautiful. Says it much better than I could ever do it. And Jesus taught in little teaching stories too.
From the teachings of Zen, there's this passage called Excess.
From Teachings of Zen, the book?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I hope I have that here. I don't think so. Go ahead and read it slowly and loudly.
If you want to seek too much, it may hinder the way. For your part, when you say your work is done, if not, then 1,000 kinds of clever talk do not enhance your mind. What is the reason for 10,000 kinds of thought?
Is that the citation? Is that the quotation? Okay,
Yeah.
now read it again slowly so I can get it.
If you want to seek too much, it may hinder the way. For your part, can you say your work is done? If not, then 1,000 kinds of clever talk do not enhance your mind. What is the reason for 10,000 kinds of thought?
Okay, good.
So that first part, if you want to seek too much, it may hinder the way.
Yes.
That one I've noticed. Like if you're, I don't know how to put it, but like if
You just get really, really excited, get really, really obsessive, and get really, really,
Yeah,
emotional.
obsessiveness is what-
instead of
Right.
just taking one calm step foot instead of in front of the other. Right? And then what?
But the second part of it, for your part, can you say your work is done? If
Okay, this
not,
is
then
the critical
thousands.
part. For your part, can you say that your work is done? It's just asking. Have you done your work, or are you just like going into books and readings and all this other stuff as a way to avoid doing your work? And he's warning. See, we have like 3 or 4 centuries of teachers and students, and they cover sooner or later virtually every kind of mistake both a teacher and a student can make, right? And this is a common one. And we really owe Clary for putting this stuff together in an enlightened translation. And that's not including Japan. That's just China. And so yeah, is your work done? Have you read this, or have you contemplated this, or have you tried to work this out in your own head, which is like the most important thing, right? Like figure out like, listen, now I have to go back and I have to figure out what they mean by non-dual. I can't figure that out anymore. I used to know what that meant, but now I don't know what it means anymore. So now I'm gonna have to go do some work to sort it out.
Mm.
Or maybe physics has advanced to the point to where we don't even need that term anymore. Nobody disagrees. I mean, I'm speaking in hyperbole, but that there's no there. And certainly the neurobiologists don't, have to agree, right? Anything more before we stop?
Yeah, last one. Again, then
You're all
the
muffled.
pivotal
You're all
point.
muffled.
When you try to set your mind on it, you miss it. When you stir your thoughts, you turn away from it. If you do not try and do not stir, you are making your living in stagnant water. What is the pivotal point for a Zenist? Is there any benefit in this ancient saying? If you say there is benefit, it binds you fatally with words. If you say there is no benefit, what is the intention? This is why it is said the heart of nirvana is easy to realize, knowledge of differentiation is hard to clarify.
Okay, now read it slowly and as clearly as you can into the mic, so if people can get it in the closed captions.
When you try to set your mind on it, you miss it. When you stir your thoughts, you turn away from it. If you do not try and do not stir, you are making your living in stagnant water. What is the pivotal point for a Zenist? Is there any benefit in this ancient saying? If you say there is benefit, it binds you fatally with words. If you say there is no benefit, what is the intention? This is why it is said, the heart of nirvana is easy to realize. Knowledge of differentiation is hard to clarify.
Okay, questions?
Well, the very first part, when you try to set your mind on it, you miss it.
Right, because it's not an object. My eyebrows are starting to ache, but I'm going to go anyway. So remember that luminous darkness, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no object there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next.
So it's just about
Or there's no place to
stopping.
there's no place to grab. How are you going to grab something that's larger than the cosmos and smaller than the Planck length? How are you going to grab that?
So does it make sense to say you have to set your mind on it to get you pointed in that direction?
Set your intent, your will,
Right.
your I think Castaneda did a good job of this. I mean, Don Juan did a fairly good job, I think. Your intent, your unbending intent. It's not your mind, it's your heart. You set your heart on it. Good question, by the way. Do you want to go further in that passage?
I don't. That was the main thing there that I wanted to ask.
Well, it's a beautiful passage and actually helps me with some of the non-dual stuff. Because before being and non-being, If I say there was something, that's wrong. If I say there was nothing, that's wrong. Do you see what I'm saying? It's okay. It doesn't matter. But so these things to which words can only point have to be discovered, each woman for herself. Do you see what I'm saying? So I can't transmit that. You can't read that. All the books do, and they do it well, is to help you prepare, because God knows civilization and our culture have done everything in their power to make you forget this priceless treasure, which is your birthright. See, and that's wrong. Okay, so anything else?
Okay, no, that's all.
All right, good. Take care. Hasta luego. Guard your mind
Bye.
out there and keep at it. Ciao.
Yep.